Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for part 7 of a 16. It's the 7th time I'm doing this. You'd think I'd have the numbers memorized. 15-part journey as we travel room by room through The Shining in the Overlook Hotel by Stephen King. This video is over chapters 22 through 25 pages, 292 through 321. And neatly stopping before part 4, titled Snowbound. So chapter 22, titled In the Truck, what happened? Wendy and Danny are on their way to the library, and Wendy tricks Danny into telling her things about Jack. Things like, is Jack drinking? It turns out he is not. Yet, ... So we get that little revelation from Danny. We also learn from Danny that Daddy is very, very afraid right now, afraid of losing the job and all of the tensions that he has built upon himself in the hotel itself. Also in this conversation, we get a little bit from Wendy when Danny asks her whether or not the doctor, or denies that the doctor actually believed in Tony, and Wendy says that doesn't matter, because she does. She will always believe him. Chapter 23 is titled In the Playground. And in chapter 23, Jack is trimming the hedges that have been shaped into animals in the playground of the Overlook Hotel. And they start moving. Or do they? No, they do. Don't they? Yes. Yes, they do. No, they don't. He questions whether or not he is having the deets, which is something we're going to talk about later, because, quite honestly, I was disappointed to see that reference in here because of something else. But chapter 24 is titled Snow, and in this chapter, it snows. Chapter 25, titled Inside 217. Danny goes ahead and decides that he's going to venture into 217. He's going to nut up and do it. Because, after all, these things can't hurt you, can they? No. Or can they? No. No, they can't. But can they? I've worn that joke out already. Damn it. But Danny goes ahead and decides to venture into room 217, and everything is hunky-dory until he ambles about and finds the bathroom and goes ahead and walks in, and it turns out there's a dead woman in the bathtub, just sitting there. And he flips out because, I mean, you know, wouldn't you? And he tries to leave. But he gets to the door and it's closed, and he doesn't think that all he has to do is open it. Instead, he's just flipping shit, and flips shit long enough to need Halloran's words as he hears the creeping woman ambling up behind him, and he remembers that Halloran said, all you've got to do is close your eyes. Close your eyes and these things disappear. And he's already used the trick before, and it worked. So he closes his eyes and says, this thing is not real, it is not real, it is not real, just long enough to feel her hands clasping around his neck. So, what is there to talk about in these chapters? I'd like to open up with what I thought was just a strong quote, and then we'll get into the two big ideas that I think are in this group of chapters. So on 310, we get this. So they went in together. This is in the chapter Snow. So they're standing on the porch watching it snow, and then they decide it's time to go in for the evening. And we get this. So they went in together, leaving the wind to build to the low-pitched scream that would go on all night. A sound they would get to know well. Flakes of snow swirled and danced across the porch. The Overlook faced it as it had for nearly 3/4 of a century. Its darkened windows now bearded with snow, indifferent to the fact that it was now cut off from the world. Or possibly it was pleased with the prospect. Inside its shell, the three of them went about their early evening routine, like microbes trapped in the intestine of a monster. I thought that that was just a really, really well done little paragraph at the end of a chapter, leading you in to a chapter dedicated entirely to haunting, that being inside room 217. I thought that was just really well done, and so the image with which we are left, microbes in the intestines of a monster. The Overlook is that monster, and the Torrances are being digested. They're just being ground out. And that was, I wouldn't say that's quite on Shirley Jackson's level, but I think that it is certainly, I think it's a step above anything I've ever seen in Clive Barker, and I think that it is a step more human and ominous, the pairing of the two, than anything I have ever seen in Michael Crichton. So that might be a pretty uniquely Stephen King passage, and I think it's worth celebrating those when they happen. On 312 and 313, this is inside room 217. They had seen caribou tracks in the snow, and once the caribou themselves, a group of 5, standing motionlessly below the security fence. They had all taken turns with Jack's Zeiss Icon binoculars to see them better, and looking at them had given Wendy a weird, unreal feeling. They were standing leg deep in the snow that had covered the highway, and it came to her that between now and the spring thaw, the road belonged more to the caribou than it did to them. Now the things that men had made up here were neutralized. The caribou understood that, she believed. There is this schism in this book, and I'm not sure exactly what to do with it, but there is this schism between nature, between those things which just occur and just happen, and those things which are man-made, those things which are processed, those things which have been redefined by human hands. And we get weird interactions between the two. Bushes are natural, animals are natural, but when human hands make the two meet, these bushes become haunted. And someone like Jack Torrance becomes a channel through which those things can communicate and be dastardly. The Hedges trouble Jack in this selection of chapters. The caribou, walking on the snow, both natural things, across the road, man-made, gives Wendy the creeps. So I think, look, this is one of the things that has troubled me with this novel for a decade now. I'm not sure what to make of it. I think what's going on there is that you have to acknowledge intent behind objects, which is in itself a type of haunting. Someone had stood at that bush and made it look like an animal. And in the recesses of your mind, it is an animal. But you have to interpret that through a bush which was manipulated by another consciousness. Caribou walking across the snow is something completely natural. There should be no alarms. There should be no red flags within that sighting. However, the road was laid down for an intent and purpose, which is here corrupted by nature, taken back, reclaimed, perhaps, by nature. I think it is in this way that those things become creepy and haunted. I think it is in this way very much the same as a building being haunted. Rooms were created for a reason, but they were created with natural things. Wood that has been chopped down and processed. Metals which have been found and melted down and shaped into the shapes they have to be for something humans are intending. There is intent within that manipulation. And I am more than open to suggestions over why this is, or where this this weird little mechanism in this novel is headed, or what it means. But just keep your eye open for those sorts of things. For the moments where something which is processed, something which is forged by human hands, becomes perverted by the natural and is therefore creepy. With the bushes, with the hedges, the reason that the moments in which we are forced to reconcile their creepiness are the moments initially where Jack has taken to them to trim them, to replace them, to remake them to their manipulated state. And I'm still struggling with this 10 years later with this novel. I don't know what it is. There is this weird little moment. And looking at them had given Wendy a weird, unreal feeling. They were standing leg deep in the snow that covered the highway, and it came to her that between now and the spring thaw, the road belonged more to the caribou than it did to them. Now the things that men had made up here were neutralized. The caribou understood that, she believed. And in this little moment, Wendy really does have a freak out. But the other thing that I think is interesting here is the mention of the deets. Jack on 305 into 306. This is as Jack is trying not to see the hedges moving while he's seeing the hedges moving. Jack put his hand suddenly over his eyes and then took it away. The picture didn't change. A soft sigh, too quiet to be a groan, escaped him. In his drinking days, he had always been afraid of something like this happening. But when you were a heavy drinker, you called them the DTS. Good old Ray Milland in The Lost Weekend, seeing the bugs coming out of the walls. The DTs, delirium tremens, If you just Google it real quick, this is the definition you get. Severe alcohol withdrawal symptoms such as shaking, confusion, and hallucinations, which usually start 2 to 5 days after the last drink. They can be fatal, and they are also known as the Blue Horrors, a nickname for the deets, which is a nickname for delirium tremens. Now, knowing anything autobiographical about Stephen King will let you know, you will remember, had some problems with alcohol. One of the sweet ironies about alcohol and alcoholism is that it is often dependent upon, and oftentimes this is how the habit is formed, for sleep. I'll take a little nip and I'll be able to sleep better. It's ironic because it's not true. Yes, alcohol will help you pass out. It will help you fall asleep. But alcohol is sugar. And that sugar racing through your system prevents you from reaching REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, REM sleep. It keeps you from that. Oftentimes, this is reported as a symptom. The deets are a symptom of alcohol withdrawal. You get the shakes, and that prevents you from sleeping. You have all sorts of pains associated with alcohol withdrawal, which keeps you from sleeping. And this is when the hallucinations can start. This is when the confusion can start. It's not where Jack mentions it. He says often in my drinking days. Why might that be often in your drinking days? New studies are showing, which anyone who has suffered through alcohol could have told you, but science did not agree with them at the time, that this is an element of drinking just as much as it is stopping drinking. The problem is, when you don't have the alcohol to help you fall asleep initially, when you quit alcohol, you don't even get the light sleep that tricks your body into feeling like you've gotten sleep. So recent studies suggest that your brain, REM sleep, is when you get dreams. When you get that deep sleep is when you get quality dreams. What they didn't know until recently, at least as far as I understand this, is that your brain has to have deep sleep, has to have dreams. Your brain has to manufacture hallucinations. That's all dreams are. Hallucinations. Your brain must manufacture hallucinations. So, when you are in the thralls of alcoholism or withdraw from alcohol, if your brain can't get that deep sleep for hallucinations, your brain goes ahead and gets hallucinations anyway. Your brain takes hallucination time from the time where you're awake. So why do you only hear about this through symptoms of withdrawal and not, if you're an alcoholic, you just hallucinate sometimes and you see shit? Why don't we hear about that? Probably because of the lack of credibility people are willing to give to people who are alcoholics in the first place. Instead of acknowledging that Jim, the office drunk, is hallucinating, that son of a bitch is still drunk, isn't he? No. His brain is literally haunting him, forcing him to see things which are not there. The reason I'm a little bit disappointed to see this in here, I didn't remember this. I didn't remember that mention of the deets being in here. And I learned what the deets really are after the time where I spent a quality amount of time with this novel. In the intervening years, I had also picked up what is the sequel to this called? Dr. Sleep? I think it's Dr. Sleep, right? The one that's about Danny as an adult. This is a mild spoiler warning for that novel. But it's something that you could guess, and it's something that you could obviously, that is baked into the marketing of the novel, and you could guess simply from knowing the type of writer Stephen King is. Danny grows up to be an alcoholic. I started a series on that book on the channel and just never finished it, but I will probably get back around to that sometime. But it is interesting to me. I had sort of started ruminations about the fact that Danny, the entire The Shining, the entire Shine, the entire The Shining and Dr. Sleep duo might be just a metaphor for alcoholism. What might reinforce that is the fact that Jack seems to have a little bit of the shine and a whole lot of the alcoholic. Danny has a whole lot of the shine and grows up to have a whole lot of the alcoholic. So herein, we sort of get from Jack elements of withdrawal deets. They're not quite as strong, and you just shake your head and get rid of the hallucinations. Danny is straight up alcoholic deets. Oh, they're there, baby. And no one really believes them. So I think that there is... So this is a literature moment, right? This is the mechanism of literature within some greater work like this, some larger piece such as The Shining, such as Dr. Sleep, such as the two of them. It is through literature that we really know ourselves because of the metaphors that literature inhabits. And because of the fact that many times, look, if you presented this to Stephen King, I don't know what he'd tell you. Is this a novel about the deets, or is the hotel really haunted? You know, where are we going with that? And I don't think on many levels most writers fully understand what they're doing, right? There's something guttural to writing, something visceral, and the moment it becomes not that way is the moment that writing becomes too contrived and we write it off, for being academic, which is something Stephen King, to my knowledge, has never been accused of. So whether or not it was written to be about the deets, one of the things literature does is it allows us the scaffolding to have a conversation about it. The hallucinations you have during alcohol withdrawal or while being an alcoholic or haunting are enough to ruin you. And notice that in the throes of these things, Jack becomes irritable. Danny, thus far, in these chapters, in room 217, has completely lost his senses. Wets himself, as alcoholics do. Wendy is the only one that doesn't really have the shining, nor does she suffer with alcoholism. Is Wendy going to have a much different experience in the hotel than her boys? Time will tell, as will the chapters. But that is all I have for this, the 7th episode in a 15-part series, traveling room through room as we live in the Overlook Hotel through a winter. I hope to see you back next week for episode 8, which will be chapters 26 through 29 and pages 322 through 368.